Around the world, there are many different skyscrapers. Two very similar skyscrapers are the Seagram building and the Lakeshore Drive apartments, both designed by Mies Van Der Rohe. Van Der Rohe was born Ludwig Mies Van Der Rohe on March 27, 1886, and lived until August 17, 1969. Mies was known as one of the three master pioneering architects of modern architecture, along with Walter Gropius and Le Corbusier. Mies studied great thinkers and philosophers to better understand the technical world that he was living in, and for ideas that were relevant to his idea of architecture. He believed that the arrangement of architectural elements had to be part of a unified expression. And studying these philosophers' words and ideas, Mies was able to create a 20th century architecture that is very simple and minimalistic. Mies had three building types that he designed: the low-rise skeleton building, the high-rise skeleton building, and the single-story clear-span building. His later buildings were made of modern materials such as glass and steel. He thought of his buildings as skin and bones, or less is more, and he thought that that's how architecture should be. He also believed in an open space that could be used in different ways. Mies was able to build these buildings because during the end of World War I was when steel and iron was mass-produced, and therefore he used this to his advantage. He was now able to build these magnificent buildings of steel and glass that could reach the sky. The Seagram building is located at 375 Park Avenue between 52nd and 53rd Street in New York City. Construction started in 1954 and was completed in 1958. Part of the reason Mies even got the commission for this building was because of his Lakeshore apartment building that he had built earlier. The Seagram building was to be an office building for the Joseph E. Seagram & Sons Corporation. While Mies studied the surrounding area of the building, he noticed that the buildings that faced Park Avenue were built very close to the sidewalk and in ordinance to local zoning laws. He didn't like this because it made the buildings have a ziggurat-like shape so they can be built taller. For Mies, this was unacceptable because he thought the shape was unappealing and not simple. To avoid this in the Seagram building, he made most of the site a plaza and then placed the building 90 feet back from Park Avenue. In doing this, he found the loophole to the zoning laws and was able to build a very elegant and simple building. The plaza was designed so people could enter off the street at ground level and interact with one another. Fountains flank both ends of the plaza and are used to mask the sounds of New York City. There is a Miesian relationship of steel frame and glass skin in Mies's buildings. The structure and skin are part of the same plan, and by using I-beams for all exposed vertical members, created a regular A-B-B-A rhythm of columns and mullions. The Seagram building, however, was built around a time when air conditioner was easily available, and therefore it needed a vent that was to be placed between the structural columns and the outer glass skin. The consequence of this was that the skin had to be separated from the structure. The curtain wall is made up of bronze-tinted glass with eye-shaped mullions, which critics say goes against Adolf Loos's crime of ornamentation because of the exaggerated depth and non-structural element of the eye-shaped mullions. The Seagram building stands 39 stories tall. The building is enclosed above the 24-foot-high ground floor. The partitions for the office rooms can be arranged behind each mullion of the curtain wall because he wanted the plan to be interchangeable if needed. Mies chose the office of Kahn and Jacobs as associate architects, and he invited Philip Johnson to be a partner for this project. Johnson was responsible for the elevator design, the lighting throughout the building, and also created the glass canopy that covers the entranceway. Johnson used luminous ceiling panels to light the interior of the building, and because of the floor-to-ceiling curtain wall that Mies used, lighting that contrasts beautifully against the steel of the mullions. Mies and other architects used the Seagram building as a prototype to other skyscrapers that he later designed and built. The Lakeshore Drive apartments are located at 860-880 North Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. Construction started in 1948 and was completed in 1951. The Lakeshore Drive apartment buildings in Chicago are twin apartment buildings that stand 26 stories tall. The steel construction of the buildings stand out in black against the glass surface of the facade. Louis Sullivan's famous form follows function, because he believed that a building's function can change, but the form will always stay the same. Mies has always been interested in high-rise buildings, and around 1920 he began to design skyscrapers with the skeleton exposed. Mies's goal was to have the structure of the skeleton exposed despite all fireproofing regulations. When he built these two apartment towers, he set a milestone in the history of architecture and in the way we live. Since the erection of these two apartment towers, many more high-rise buildings have been built in Chicago. Both the Lakeshore Drive apartments and the Seagram building seem to be lifted off the ground by columns that continue up through the building. Mies built both of these buildings with his belief of less is more, by designing them with an exposed structure made of glass and steel. He used a series of overlapping grids, point-line plane, to arrange the building's program. The floors are supported by exposed columns in which the owner could set up movable partitions to define space. Mies did not want the beauty of his building disrupted by ugly curtains or blinds that the occupants or workers in the building would put up. To avoid this in the Lakeshore Drive apartments, he had all the windows have gray curtains to contrast with the black steel. In the Seagram building, he had Venetian blinds installed. What made these blinds special is that they can only be moved in a very limited number of ways, either completely open, completely closed, or halfway open. It's clear that Mies did not want his masterpieces to be ruined by silly things like curtains that can destroy a facade's composition. A shocking but fascinating similarity is that both the Lakeshore Drive apartments and the Seagram building appear as if the eye-shaped mullions that run vertically alongside the facade are structural, but in actuality they play no role in supporting anything other than themselves. This completely contradicts Mies's principles of design and anti-use of ornamentation. There are a few things that make these buildings different. The Seagram building is 13 stories taller than the Lakeshore Drive apartments. The functions of the buildings are very different as well. One is an apartment complex in Chicago, while the other is an office building in Manhattan. The apartment building also sits on a triangular lot, while the office building sits on a rectangular site.